In a previous video, I said that the Negro was politically retarded. And the reason why I say this is because the Negro often acts against his own best interests. Now, everybody else understands how politics works. You use economic power to get political power so that you can get your agenda met. But in the case of the Negro, he comes to the political table either with one, no agenda, or two, an agenda filled with shallow and superficial things. Now, the reason why the Negro is politically retarded is because, he just doesn't understand how political systems work. In most cases, he just wants to seek the approval of white people. The big problem with this Negro is he lives his entire life looking for the approval of white liberals, and he thinks that if he can get the approval of white liberals, they will see him and indirectly meet his needs, but you have to be very clear and specific about what you want in order to get your needs met. See, the Negro thinks that that people, if he, goes along to get along, people will give him, again, crumbs from the table, and they will, kind of, sort of understand what he wants. And this is, really backwards when it comes down to this Negro. This is why I say he's politically retarded, because he's looking to get his need. He doesn't come to the table with a platform, with a set of goals, or with an agenda. He's going there, looking for things that are really superficial. If you look at the recent, Confederate flag debate that many of these Negroes, marched and protested over, it shows how politically retarded your Negro is. Because at the end of the day, people like your Hispanics are going to the political table and they're getting money in exchange for the money that they put in. They put money in on a special interest platform and they get money coming out. The Negro comes in looking for symbolic victories, symbolic, symbols, symbolic things, and he doesn't come in, with a plan to get money. His whole goal politically is to win the approval of white people, win acceptance of white people, and, win the favor of white people. He's like the pathetic junior high school kid who was a complete nerd, and he thinks that, if he goes and does stuff, he will get cool points. And the whole thing is that, life is not about cool points. In a political situation, in a political world, you are trying to get increase your economic power. And this is something that your Negro just doesn't understand. That you want to use your political platform so you can increase your economic power. And this is something that, sadly, gays understand, Hispanics understand, Asians understand, Arabs understand. They all understand that economic power is political power, and their goal is not seeking the approval of some white person or seeking the favor of some white person. Their goal is to make money. Their goal is to use a political platform to make money. They are not about making people happy or finding love from something. The big problem with the Negro is he's trying to get his emotional needs met on a political stage. And a political stage is not about emotions. A political stage, again, is about building an economic platform and increasing your economic resources so that you and your group can compete in the world with other groups. But your Negro just doesn't understand this, again, because he's politically retarded. And because he's politically retarded, again, I go back to the Super Mario Brothers analogy. He's just like the retarded child who's, begged and lobbied his bigger, older brother or the cool people to let him play the Super Mario Brothers game. People, feel sorry for him. They give him the controller, and they push start. They let him play, and he pushes the Mario forward, and it runs into the Goomba and dies. And then they want to take the controller back. Negro, kicks up a fuss, gets upset, and says, you're not letting him play. But it clearly shows that Negro doesn't understand how to play the game. He doesn't know how the buttons work. He doesn't know how the pad work. He doesn't know the techniques for beating the Goombas and all the other, assorted characters on the board. He doesn't know how to build up momentum to jump over things so that he doesn't fall into a bottomless pit. This Negro, he just sits there, and then then when you don't let him play, he says that you're doing things wrong to him. But it's clear that he just doesn't understand how things work on a political stage. And he's still using, old archaic methods of marching and protesting when we have moved beyond this. Again, just like the kid with the Super Mario Brothers, he's still playing the same game, and he's still trying to work with this old 8-bit system, but he doesn't understand. We live in a Nintendo Wii U world where everything is three-dimensional. People are using nunchuck controllers, and it's a whole different technique for beating the bad guys in these games. And he hasn't adapted, he hasn't changed, and he's still, again, because he's still seeking to get his emotional needs met on a political stage. He's still seeking, he still doesn't understand how things work. He doesn't understand that, you're never going to get accepted by anybody. I mean, this is why your own black woman does not respect a Negro anymore, because she's also, evolved and said that, look, she's adapted and learned how to play the game, but your Negro male, again, is still seeking approval, still seeking acceptance, and still wanting to be liked, again, like this pathetic nerd kid or this other type of child. And he still doesn't understand that, this is not about being accepted. This is not about, seeking somebody's approval. This is, in a political platform, it's about you learning how to, build that platform so that you can bring money and resources back to your community. And Negro just doesn't understand this. This is why he continues to vote straight down a Democratic ticket for politicians who vote against his own best interests. I can even say this about, some of these white people, these southern states or these other states where they have the same issues, but the Negro more so, because if you look at it and how shallow and superficial the things that he votes for and the goals that he sets, and it shows, how politically retarded he actually is. And I look at cases, recently like Eric Garner. You have people like Al Sharpton, again, showing how politically retarded they are by, asking for these broad, open-ended goals like justice. I mean, what is justice? I mean, we really need to ask that question, because it really, these guys go out saying that they want justice, but then at the end of the day, most people wind up with nothing. Now, if anybody looks at the whole Eric Garner case and many of these other cases, you think one of the goals you would have would be to get these rogue officers who participate in these acts terminated off the job. You think that would be, a primary goal. But whenever you listen to these, so-called civil rights activists, this is never put on the goal as set on the table. It's one of the goals for their platform. And I look at the whole Eric Garner situation, I'm like, this man had 2 federal civil rights lawsuits against him. You would think you would be trying to create a political platform to get this man terminated. You would think by sitting down with the mayor, you would try to explain to him that, every day this man, this officer who choked out Eric Garner, is on the force, and him and his black female supervisor are on the force. They are setting a bad example for other officers, and they are also causing a strain on police relations. And you would think that, this would be the argument that your Al Sharpton or any civil rights activist would use, so that they would understand that the faster you get rid of this rogue officer, take the individual away from the group, the NYPD can, focus on improving its community relations. But, because your Negro is politically, like your Al Sharpton is politically retarded, they come at you with these marches and protests, with these broad, open-ended goals of justice, and not a specific, set of goals for what they want on a platform. Now, justice, it sounds good, but when you have a political platform, you need more than justice. And you also need, to show that there are some dollars behind that, so that people understand that there is a monetary value and consequences for, your actions. And this is something that the Arabs did back in the 70s with tremendous impact. The U.S. tried to get into OPEC's face and demanded more oil for their gas-guzzling Lincoln Mark 7s, Cadillac DeVilles, and Chevrolet Impalas. And the OPEC community put an embargo on the U.S. that pretty much crippled the country. And in the wake of that embargo, the U.S. pretty much, stopped producing these, luxury boats that we saw back in the 70s, and started producing more compact, fuel-efficient cars. And this is because long-term, the U.S. really, their auto industry literally got crippled and was almost on its way to becoming obsolete, because, The days of the 7 mile per gallon Lincoln Mark 7, or the not Mark 7, Mark 4 at the time, or the Cadillac DeVille's end, or the Chevrolet Impalas, or the estate wagons they like to drive, these huge cars, you know, that really crippled their economy, because what happened was the Japanese came in with their little Toyotas and pretty much started cornering the market. The Toyotas, the Subarus, the Datsuns, they started coming in, and people wanted more fuel efficient cars, and that really changed the game back in the 70s. And the U.S., really was forced, after that, to understand that, you can't go around flexing on countries with economic power. And and the whole OPEC bloc, put a line in the sand and made a statement. And this is the same type of statement your Negro could have made, you know, even as soon as last year with Black Friday, but Negro didn't do that. And the reason why, and the whole thing is that in the aftermath of the whole OPEC oil embargo, what happened was U.S. never messed with OPEC again, even after 9/11, when all these terrorists came and destroyed the World Trade Center here in New York. They did not go after them in the way that, with all that hostility, or even attack people, in the same way they do this Negro. But the reason why the Negro, gets no respect, because again, he's politically retarded, and his approaches, are completely backwards. He's still seeking, again, trying to get his emotional needs met, and this is why in his quest for getting, his emotional needs met on a political stage and seeking the approval of people is the reason why he can't get an economic platform, and an economic agenda set. This is why, in the face of all these so-called intellectuals and armchair Negroes, nothing is getting done, because everybody is still seeking to get their emotional needs met on a political stage. And a political stage is not a place to get your emotional needs met. If you want to get your emotional needs met or deal with your emotional issues, you go find a nice psychotherapist like www.asktheiceman.com. You go find a psychotherapist and you go deal with your emotional issues, your unresolved personal issues, and you deal with that there. On an economic stage, a political stage, you're sitting there. Your goal is to get your economic needs met, and this is something that your Negroes just don't understand, and they're still approaching, this whole political platform, this modern day political platform, again, from a 1960s perspective, where black people are still looking to get acceptance and approval. And the whole thing is that when it comes down to economics, you're not looking for acceptance and approval of others. You're looking to create an economic system that allows you to allocate resources and create more resources for yourself and gain a piece of this pie. Hispanics understand this, and Asians understand this. Even gays understand this, because now gays now have an economic platform and an economy, and they're able to flex their economic muscles and get people to back up off them whenever they try to come at them with homophobic statements, or try to attack them in certain ways. All of these people understood the importance of building that economic platform in order to the economic base to influence politics, so that they can create those policies that allow them to enrich themselves. Because if you have a strong economic base, you can go to legislators and go to them with your platform, and get policies made that enable you to make more money for your community and get more resources for your community. And this is something that your Negro just doesn't understand. He just doesn't understand how this process works. He just doesn't understand how these approaches work. He doesn't understand that, again, economic power is how you get political power, and then use the political power to get more economic power for yourself. Because when you have legislators on your side, you can have policies written that enable you to make more money for yourself and corner more markets for yourself, and that allows you to compete, politically, and have that economic system, that allows you to continue to build your community and build that block of voters that people want to appeal to. But because your Negro is politically retarded, most people just take him for granted. They look at him as a pathetic kid in the room. He's still playing on the green screen Game Boy, or he's still playing with a Nintendo 8-bit system, and everybody else has graduated on to this Nintendo Wii U with this advanced technology, this advanced graphics, and they're, you know, moving forward. They have surpassed this Negro in every way, shape, or form, and he's still sitting here, still trying to use these old approaches that have not worked in years, and still thinking that, doing the exact same things will lead to a different result, and that what worked in 1960 will work in 2015, and this is just not the case at all. The world has changed, the world has evolved, and the approaches for, you know, achieving political goals has evolved. And the Negroes' approaches, are so far behind times, it's not even funny. This is, again, why I say the Negro is politically retarded. Because, who continues to try to do the exact same things and expects a different result? I mean, either an insane person or a retarded person. And the sad part is with the insane person is, maybe there's a way you can get him to see logic. But with the retarded person, they're still stuck, in this state of arrested development. They still have the mind of a child. So there is no way for them to grow mentally. And as they get, and the sad part is with this Negro, he grows older, but he never grows up. And because he never grows up, he never learns how to deal with the world politically from an adult perspective. He still sees it from a child's perspective.